Hello, hello, it's Brian from Tavarn Games here with another update to Dungeon Maker. So last update, I previewed the lighting system I was working on. I've got that finished up. It's in the map editor as well as the multiplayer part of the game. I've also added the ability for dungeon masters, game hosts, to add in enemies and NPCs in the middle of an encounter. I've changed up how the action maker works and how you input action data for your characters. And a couple other little features here and there and items. So let's jump in. I'm hosting a game here. We've got the host in the top left corner and then 3 players in it. So let's dive into an encounter. So we drop into this town, and the town is set to nighttime. You can see the little drop down here on the DM's menu shows that it's night. For players that don't have night vision, you can see that it is very dark if there's no torches. Like, you cannot see without the torches the DM is placed. For the DM, the host, as well as any characters with night vision, and night vision can be added in the character editor page. They can see in this dimmer blue light, so it's still clear that it's nighttime, but they can see enough to be able to navigate around, see where the NPCs are, and the DM can see enough to see everyone and whatever's happening. But what about for players that don't have night vision? Well, we have this button here, the light torch button, which will show up for all players. As we click it, we get a new light lit up right on that player, and everyone can see that. You can see the light shows up for everyone, and that torch, that light, will follow the player around. It sticks on the player for everyone, so everyone's light ends up being the same. So this way, players that don't have night vision can still navigate at nighttime when there aren't lights placed by the DM, and or they can stay in the dark and try to navigate and run into walls, or succeed in getting through the door. And try to find their way around. Now, the DM also has the ability to change the time of day using that drop-down menu in the middle of an encounter. So we want to change it to dawn or dusk, where we have this dimmer red light, trying to make it look a bit like a sunrise, as well as daytime, where everything is just fully lit up. And that data is synced to all the players. So you don't have to create multiple maps for different times of day. You can change it on the fly. The players spend all day in a tavern and it's now dusk. You can make it dusk. This could also be used if you've got a map where you have an outside portion at the entrance of, say, a cave, and then the outside's meant to be daytime or dusk, and then inside the cave is meant to be dark. You can have it lit up outside, and then once the players enter the cave, you switch it over into night mode, and it will darken the cave for them. So you can have dynamic lighting in a way. Okay, so that is the lighting system. It's working pretty well. All the players can see it, and that'll really help your games just be a bit livelier and a little more interesting. So the other thing I mentioned, of course, is adding the enemies and NPCs. So the DM has these 2 new buttons. If we click on the enemy button, all of the enemies that the DM, the host, has added into their game will be visible to be placed on the map. So let's say you've got what's supposed to be a hard encounter and the players are just steamrolling through it no trouble, and you want to add some reinforcements. Or maybe you have a mimic planned on the map. You have a treasure chest that's going to turn into a mimic, and you need to place that, but you don't want the players to see it beforehand. Well, you can pop open this menu, select the enemy you want to place, and for you, the host, you'll see this sort of ghost, the shadow version of it, that the players will not see. So you can then place it down, and the enemy will appear in the enemies. It takes a second for the portrait data to send, since it's this higher resolution data, and the multiplayer in Unity has a messaging limit of how much data can be sent over the network through messages at a time. So I had to retime the messages, so it takes about 2 seconds to send over all the data for this larger portrait, but it makes sure that that data actually makes it to the players. When I was first testing these larger portraits with some friends and playing a game, the portraits didn't send to one of the players because I was hitting that message data buffer limit. And so that player could only see the default picture and they couldn't see what the enemy was intended to look like. So I slowed down the rate of the messages being sent to the players to make sure that data does not hit the buffer limit, and all the players can then see it. So it does take a second, but it makes sure that the pictures make it and they're higher resolution so they look nicer. And there we go. So it just takes that second. And everyone can see it. They can immediately interact with those enemies and start attacking them and rolling 7s. This person cannot hit. There we go. There's a hit. And so you can play them on the fly, change the encounters, or, make a bandit attack happen in a town just for fun. So you have that tool. And then, of course, we have the adding of NPCs. So this could be useful if, let's say, the players talk to a mercenary in town and that mercenary decides to join them. Before, you would have had to have that mercenary's NPC already on the encounter maps, but the players might not have talked to him. So you have to try to hide that NPC or explain away why they're there. Whereas now, if the players convince an NPC to come with them, you can just add that NPC, accidentally clicked away from the menu, and click them on the map when you need them. And they will show up, they'll be visible to all the players, and as a DM, you can take control of them, move them around, and perform attacks and actions, and use them. Another possible use is if you have a player who can't make it 1 week, they can't make it to a session, you could create an NPC version with the same actions and health and AC as the player, and then put them in the game using this adder on whatever encounters you need them to be in. And as the DM, you can sort of take control of them so that the character's still in the game. You don't have to remap all the encounters for the lack of a player. So yeah, those tools are now in there. And let's drop into this player, because the next update was modifying the adding actions menu, the action maker. So let's pop that open. And you can see, instead of having just one menu with a whole ton of options you have to fill in, you first get this sub-menu that has the different types of actions you can add to the game. So we've got melee and ranged attacks, and touch/melee spells, area spells on yourself, area spells at a range, so that's like Fireball, cones, so like Cone of Cold, and line attacks. And so let's select one. So let's add Fireball. So we'll select area range. So we still have a fair few number of fields, but it's only the fields we need, and they explain exactly what you need to put in for that effect. So we know the name is Fireball, so its radius is 20 feet. Its range, I believe, is 150 feet. The damage type is fire. It's a lot of damage, 8d6, and saving throw is dexterity so far as I remember. And let's say we have a 16 spell save. So there, we have only the data we need. Extra damage if you would like it. So if it also does an extra... Fireball doesn't do extra damage, but your attack might. Save it, and it will add to our list. Actually, we already had Fireball, but hey, we have 2 Fireballs now. So let's click on that, and you can see we can instantly use it. Everyone can see the spell radius. Let's hit the town. See if we can hit the town guards and not ourselves. No, we're going to hit ourselves. Let's do it. Attack ourselves with Fireball. And we'll hit everybody. It'll do its damage. And there you go. So the other thing we can do now is edit existing actions. So we have these new little icons in game. Let's say you input an action wrong. You accidentally got the damage wrong, or the damage type wrong. Well, let's click on one. We can edit it. And let's say this one, hand crossbow does d6. Let's say it was supposed to do d8 for whatever reason. We can save that, and if we hover over it again, it now has 1d8 damage as its damage. Use it right away, and promptly miss our attack. Okay, oh, we hit the second time. There we go. Yeah, so that adds a little functionality for the players in case they made a mistake, or they need to change things on the fly, or they get a new item. They buy a new weapon, or find one in a treasure trove or something, and they need to add that. The other thing that this is doing now that it didn't do before is when you make changes to these actions, those changes will save to your save file now. They didn't used to. You used to have to remember to then re-add the action after. So I finally added in the code to have it so these actions, when changed here, will save to your player file. So if you got a new weapon, you bought a new weapon and you add it right away so you can use it in the game, it will save, and you'll have it for all future sessions. You don't have to remember to re-add it between sessions. So yeah, that's the actions being changed. Let's just deselect that. And then so a couple little things of movement in game. Just for fun, I made it so characters can rotate their portraits, and the DM can also rotate enemies. And that data will sync to the players, and everyone can rotate. We can do a little dance party. Nice little dance party, and you can see we're rotating in that. So that it's just for fun. You don't need to use it. It can look a little silly having a character portrait looking upside down, but it could be useful in encounters if you want to really make it very clear what direction various enemies and characters are facing for when you're dealing with surprise attacks. determining if someone's behind an enemy. This could make it very clear. And that's just using the Q and E keys. You can rotate in each direction using either key. And the data will sync to all the players. So that's another little tool. So let's exit this game. That's all the multiplayer stuff to show off. And let's exit. Let's go to our settings and just make this a bigger screen so it'll look a little nicer. Okie dokie. So the other thing, it's not too much, but if we go into the edit campaign, let's go into that campaign. So if we go into the campaign map, if we go under the coastlines, we've got some new coastline shapes I've added in. Still have to clean up the artwork a little bit, but these ones look all right. So you can add in different shapes of islands. There's a couple new coastline shapes you can add in, and this little small peninsula. Now there's one that faces the other direction. So you can add those in and have these little mirrored shapes and stuff. So we've got, oh, that's not the way that goes. I'm pressing this, too many. There we go. We can add in some new coastline shapes. Also for roads and rivers, we've got these new shapes. So let's delete a little bit of the river there. We have angled rivers now. So you can add rivers on an angle if you want. Let's get rid of that and link that up. And same thing for the roads. We now have angled roads as well as these angled bridges. Now that had to be split into two parts to make it line up with where the river goes through and where you would need the bridges. So you do have to place those in two parts, but we have these bridges now that go on an angle instead of straight. So you have a few more options in how you can place those and how you can make the roads and rivers look. But yeah, we've got that on the campaign map. So let's just exit. We won't save that. And then let's drop into that map we were looking at earlier. Turn that to daytime since it was at night. For the decor, you might look at this and be like, where'd all the different items go? There used to be dozens in a huge long menu. But I split it up into a bunch of different submenus. So we've got bottles and glasses as a category and where all those are. We can add them. Books and writing. I don't have too many items in this option yet, but I'll be adding more. The kitchen items and food, so buckets and cauldrons, place settings, different food options. The weapons and armor, the lighting, as well as some new art. Treasures, we've got some gems now and some crowns that can be placed just as prizes for people. And, your corpses and bodies and stuff. So we've got all these new items in the submenus just to make it easier to navigate. There we go, accidentally. We can put a skull on that. I should probably make the skulls a little bit smaller. But yeah, we've got those new submenus and some new items to place. And so yeah, that's my update for this week. For those who have purchased Dungeon Maker on Steam, thank you very much for your support, and please feel free to let me know of anything you'd like to see added to the game or changes you'd like to see made. As well, if you're not yet supporting me on Patreon or Steam, please consider it. Their support really helps me out in the development of this game and giving me the resources I need to do it. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you very much for watching. Have a good one.